Let's jump in. Numbers, the book of Numbers. Numbers, after following Exodus and the freedom that the Israelites experienced then in Exodus, and they also, Moses received the law then and instruction for building the tabernacle. Then in Leviticus, as we just kind of take the snapshot view, there is the implementation and instruction for the priesthood in the book of Leviticus. And now here we are in the book of Numbers, and the children of Israel are being organized and they are being mobilized. They are being set and ready to make progress, to make their way to and into the promised land. In doing so, as we will see as we continue studying in the book of Numbers, it's going to be a walk of faith. That they understand there's this promise that God has for them, that there is this promised land, this land of milk and honey. And sometimes that's all they have, is that promise that God is going to take them there. But as you know, throughout this story of the years of wandering, as it says on the title slide, I can't remember and I can't read it, is that they get to these points in this, what is supposed to be and should have been a very short journey, where they have this tendency to fall back and reason through things with human understanding instead of just trusting these promises and walking by faith. And here is what it should be encouraging for us and how we can make application. Because this pictures, if we think about it, can picture our walk with God. Like Israel, if you're here, you're born again, you have been freed from slavery of sin. You have been released of that bondage. You have experienced that liberty. And then we have also, like them, been given God's presence. We're continuing to move forward in our life towards what He has for us. But what happens? We can struggle along the way. I know God has taken me somewhere. I know He desires to take me somewhere. I know I have His presence with me. He's freed me in the past. But at this moment, I can struggle. What are you doing? And so it's going to be a great study. I'm very happy for it. And as we mentioned last week, again, just because it's a little bit of information, I wanted to throw this one slide back up here about it's a story of 2 generations. And so there's the account of the old generation from the first 14 chapters of the book of Numbers. And then in chapters 15 through 20, there's this transitional period until there is a new generation that receives new instruction and a census in chapters 21 through 36. And so we just got going in this book. We looked at the first 2 chapters. People are being counted, where each tribe's fighting age men were counted. And so we looked at those numbers. We also looked at how then the people were arranged within the camp of Israel, of course, centered around the tabernacle, but in each of the cardinal directions, there's groups of 3 tribes in each direction. And then now as we head into chapters 3 and 4, we move from a census of the warriors in chapters 1 and 2 that we just looked at into chapters 3 and 4 is a census of the worshipers, the priests and the Levites. And so we're going to begin, look at these first 4 verses of Numbers 3, and we see the family of Aaron. Now, these are the records of Aaron and Moses when the Lord spoke with Moses on Mount Sinai. Now, what's interesting here, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if you have the New King James Version, it uses the word records here. This is the records of Aaron and Moses, which is a good translation. I'm not saying it's not, but usually that word is translated as descendants. If you have the old King Jimmy, I think it says the generations. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it says generations. And so what's interesting that these are listed as the people of Aaron and Moses. Usually that's descendants, this is the generations of them. And I think the idea is that it's like, this is the legacy of these two men. Here's the record of what became of these two men, the legacy that was produced, as it says here, at Mount Sinai. Here is their record. Here's the account of their people. And so it goes on to say in verse 2, and these are the names of the sons of Aaron: Nadab, the firstborn, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the anointed priests, whom he consecrated to be ministers, to minister as priests. But, verse 4, Nadab and Abihu had died before the Lord when they offered profane fire before the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai. And so we have this account back in Leviticus chapter 10. We don't need to turn there, but if you remember that situation, the worship for the tabernacle had just begun. The tabernacle had just been erected, right? And then the priesthood is just getting implemented. They just got ordained. And then Aaron, at this like inauguration, he blesses the people. And then it's just an incredible scene. It's one of those scenes that like you'd never forget in your life. But God's presence comes and fire falls from heaven and ignites the offering, the sacrifice that's on the altar. And as you can imagine, if you could just picture what that might be like, the congregation is just in awe. Man, again, like our God is something else. This is incredible. But if you remember, it's at that time that these two oldest sons that are mentioned here in verse 4, Nadab and Abihu, they offered, it says, strange fire. And I want to just talk about that for a little bit. And I know we looked at this when we were in the book of Leviticus, but it was fire. God sent down fire. They have fire. And so on the surface, it looked spiritual. It looked like something God might be a part of. Now, there's no question that these two, Nadab and Abihu, that they had passion. They had zeal. They had, I imagine that they had charisma. They're into this. In fact, Nadab's name means free will offering. This is how he's all about this. But what they didn't understand at that moment was the weightiness of ministry. I was just talking to someone yesterday, about that, about the calling that God has on people. And there's I like that word. There's a weightiness to it. And if you're familiar, the word glory in the Old Testament, that's actually what it means. It means weighty, and I like that. There's a weightiness to ministry, and they didn't get this weightiness to this calling that they had in their life. And in doing so, not understanding this weightiness and God's glory, they didn't set him apart as holy, as something different, as something separate. And so we can understand then that they began to make the ministry about them. And so this strange fire that they have, they seem to be, they didn't get it from the altar. They didn't get it from the Lord. They seem to be seeking their own glory instead of seeking to glorify him. They want their own weightiness instead of the weightiness of God. And so they look to make their own name great. And then it says that fire, when this took place, when they were presumptuous in this way, that fire went out from the Lord and devoured them. Well, that'd be pretty awe-inspiring too. It's one thing to see it fall on the sacrifice, but then to also consume Nadab and Abihu. First guys ever to be fired in the ministry. First guys ever these are just standard pastor, it's in the manual, you have to make these jokes. first ones ever burnt out in the ministry. But Nadab and Abihu, they prove themselves to be corrupt, and God himself takes care of it right from the beginning. Not having that. That's not what ministry is about. And so this lesson, there's a couple of things I want us to look at before we move on. The lesson that is taught there back in Leviticus is that strange fire, as it's called, strange fire is any fire that doesn't come from the altar. Whenever what we have in ministry, and we're all in the ministry, right? That's Ephesians 4:32. My job is to equip you for the work of the ministry because you're in the ministry. Is that when we offer to God that which doesn't originate at the altar, it's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to man, it's just, I can't, it's just too much. It's overwhelming, right? And if that fire, if you're trying to engage in the ministry and it's fueled by talent or ambition or the need for approval, right? It's just a matter of time before that fuel is going to get burnt out. And as I said, we're all in the ministry. In fact, 1 Peter tells us we're all priests, okay? And the altar for us, we sang about it just a minute ago. Love that song, "Oh, come to the altar." Now, I hope in your mind, you're not like, there is a physical altar that I'm supposed to walk up to, right? And now I'm accepted by God. What's the altar for us in the church? It's the cross, right? Because the altar is the place of sacrifice. And it's because of where the sacrifice is, I'm accepted. That's how the Old Testament would view it. Well, our altar isn't an altar of stone. Our altar, the place of sacrifice, is the cross. And that's the place that our sacrifice is made. So the only thing that's going to keep us going, to keep us faithful and in this place of ministry that we're called to, is to find our source of fire, what ignites us to do the work of the ministry, has to begin at the altar. It has to begin at the place of the cross. And the place of the cross, the altar, where Jesus' sacrifice is made, is not the place that I prove what I can do for God. It's the place that he has proven what he has done for me. That's where the proper fire and ignition for all of our ministries needs to begin. And if we're looking for anywhere else to fuel and ignite what God has called us to, looking for an attaboy, looking for some more rewards, like this is how I might benefit. I need the attention. This is what makes me feel valued, or even I love those people. So that's a dangerous place to start. Those are dangerous and strange fires if that's what ignites your service. Now, there's one more piece of application before we move on here that I want to look at that's significant. As I mentioned, that took place in Leviticus 9, like at the inauguration of tabernacle worship. Right after giving the law, they have just entered into this old covenant with the Lord, and God reminds them, and I say God reminds them, not just Nadab and Abihu. He reminded the whole nation. They're still writing about it here. This was a monumental moment that he reminds them that his holiness matters, that doing things his way is of the utmost importance. Okay? And what's interesting to me, if you'll remember, that God kind of wipes some folks out again, a pair of people, in the New Testament, right after the church has their beginning. Do you guys remember that? Remember who that was? Ananias and Sapphira. Church just getting going. They had just entered into this new covenant, and they are struck down for lying to the Holy Spirit. And so the lesson here, the kind of dual lessons that our fuel has to come from the altar, from the place of what he has done for me. But it's not just that we serve that matters, but it's how we serve that matters. And so verse 4 continues here. Needless to say, Nadab and Abihu, they had no children. That's hard to do when you're dead. So Eleazar and Ithamar ministered as priests in the presence of Aaron, their father. Now, again, they had no children. And I know we're going slow. We're going to speed up. Trust me. But they had energy. They grabbed the fire. They're into this, all like the free will offering. That's what his name means. But they left no legacy. There's no children. They're just a telltale of, hey, here's what happens when you don't do things the Lord's way. And so, I guess they left a legacy. They just do it in a positive way. And so we got to ask ourselves that we're all called to ministry. What legacy are we leaving? Are we one that's just going to get all fired up, but eventually flames out? A reminder to others like, man, that's how not to do things. And those are valuable lessons. I just don't want you to leave that lesson for someone else. And I'll tell you, that's a lesson that we do learn. Again, we see it all the time in the news. Like this prominent pastor, this prominent Christian leader has gotten involved in this, and it's like, man, I don't want to leave a cautionary tale as the lesson and the legacy that I'm leaving. I don't want that for you in your life. And so we want this lasting, enduring legacy. And when it comes to names and meanings here, I like that Eleazar's name means the Lord is my help. I like that. As I thought about and I dwelt on that today, there is in his identity, there's a sense of dependence. Lord's my help. I'm not getting through here without him. Man, and he's the one that's going to have this lasting legacy in a positive way to his children and his children. He's going to have that legacy. That priestly line is going to continue through these two, Eleazar and Ithamar. And it says, as they ministered, they served. It says in the presence. It's literally in the face of Aaron the high priest. And I want you to remember that tidbit. They ministered in the face of Aaron the high priest. Now, verse 5, we have the tribe of Levi's calling. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, bring the tribe of Levi near. Okay, watch this. The word for draw near, I loved this. The root word is the word for offering and sacrifice. Draw near, that word in the Hebrew is the root word for offering and sacrifice. And so there's this connection being made here. So it's like the tribe of Levi themselves is the offering. And so over these next few verses, as we're going to see and kind of what this chapter's about, is that God has established this idea that the Levites are set aside and they're presented like an offering to the Lord as a substitute for the firstborn of the rest of the children of Israel. So verse 5 continues, bring the tribe of Levi near, present them before Aaron the priest that they may serve him. Remember that? Again, serve Aaron, and they shall attend to his needs and the needs of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of meeting to do the work of the tabernacle. Also, they shall attend to all the furnishings of the tabernacle of meeting and to the needs of the children of Israel to do the work of the tabernacle. Verse 9, and you shall give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are given, and when you read this in the Hebrew, the word given is repeated twice for emphasis. It's literally, they are given. They are given entirely to him. To who? To Aaron from among the children of Israel. That's their calling. They're given to him. That's their responsibility. Verse 10, so you shall appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall attend to their priesthood. But the outsider, those without this Levitical calling on their life, the non-Levite who comes near, says, shall be put to death. And so Aaron, and these terms, maybe you've heard the Levitical priesthood, the tribe, right? Within that is the family of Aaron. Sometimes we hear, we just talked about it on Sunday, the Aaronic priesthood, that priesthood from his family. He, Aaron, and his sons here, Eleazar and Ithamar, and the descendants after them, all the succeeding generations of priests would be the high priest, and then the rest of the tribe of Levi. Their calling was to attend to Aaron, the high priest. And I think as we talk about ministry and all of us being in ministry, there's another lesson and application for us to learn. One of the things that we are in the midst of, in the thick of, in the book of Hebrews, I was just talking to someone again out there. I am loving how these books have paired together, Leviticus and Numbers. But we're told repeatedly in the book of Numbers, it's where we're at right now, that Jesus is our what? Our great high priest. And so when we're reading through the Old Testament and we're reading about the high priest, our mind should go, what picture of Jesus could be being presented to me here? Because again, Peter tells us that we're of a kingdom of priests. We're part of a royal priesthood. And so we're like the Levites, so to speak. And our ministry, our first ministry as priests, is to the great high priest. Our ministry is unto Jesus. And so often folks think about ministry, and I know that, I was caught in this trap for a few years when I was much, much younger, but they think ministry is ministry. It's being on stage, it's sitting on the stool, it's having the Bible open and talking to people, it's playing the guitar, that this is where ministry takes place. And a lot of people want to be on the front lines, so to speak, and that's great, that's okay. But faith-filled and faithful ministry to him always needs to take precedence over ambition. And so one's calling is always first, as we consider Jesus as the great high priest, one's calling is always first to him, not for him. It's got to begin with this vertical relationship. Again, this is for every single one of us. I'm not preaching to a select few here, because we're all in the ministry and we all have a great high priest. And so as we fulfill our calling that God has on our lives, it is about prioritizing personal worship. It's to minister to him. Prioritizing personal devotion and study time. That always has to come first. That personal devotion before public service. And many times I have people come into my office and they say something along the lines of, you know what, I've been kind of sitting on the sidelines for a while, but now I'm ready to get involved. I'm ready to do ministry, and they will tell me this is a good spot for me. This is where I should get plugged in, And as lovingly as I can say, a good spot for you is just sit at the feet of Jesus. Spend some time with him. Spend some time in that first place of ministry with and to the great high priest. Martha got a lot of work done, didn't she? Got a lot of attention, but it was to Mary, that Jesus said, she has chosen the better thing. Ministering to the high priest, just sitting in the presence of Jesus. No added weight of responsibility. Just start there. Because again, these are lessons that we all have to learn, and I've had to learn this too. Until our greatest joy is being with God, you should not be doing for God. And that's why, again, as I started our study today, you guys, right now, you are in the greatest place of ministry that there is in the church. Just sitting at his feet on a Wednesday night. There's so many other things you could do. tasks to get done, honeydews. Maybe that's why you're here, to get out of the honeydews. I'm just kidding. But just desiring to come, to open up even the book of Numbers, to see and hear and minister to the great high priest. It's the best place to be. Now, at the end of verse 10, it says, if a Levite assumed a position that wasn't his, it's directly in the face of how God intended. He's going to end up again burnt out and wiped out. Verse 11, then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, now behold, I myself, I love that possessive ownership. I love this. I myself have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among the children of Israel. God says, I've personally done this. No one else has decided. I've decided to do this. I have taken them, and I have this calling on them to what? To draw near, to be an offering to me, to be a sacrifice to me, because I have substituted them, he says, in place of the firstborn. And we'll look at that as it goes on here. It says, therefore the Levites shall be mine, verse 13, because, here's why the Levites are mine, because all the firstborn are mine. On the day that I struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified, set aside as holy to myself, all the firstborn in Israel, both man and beast. They shall be mine. I am the Lord. And again, let's hear a tone of love in that. Not they shall be mine, but they shall be mine. I'm the Lord. Now, how this tribe of Levi became the substitutes for the firstborn is found for us in Exodus chapter 32. You'll remember Moses came down the mountain, sees, well, first they hear the people. Joshua's like, hey, what's going on, right? Sees the golden calf, the sinful idolatry, the adultery, and he asks, in the face of all of that sin, grievous sin, he says, who's on the Lord's side? Because it doesn't seem right now like anybody is. And at that point, the Levites, the tribe of Levi said, we are. They stepped forward. And again, it tells us that they executed judgment on 3,000 people that day. They were the ones that stood and were strong and did what needed to be done. And I was thinking about this today, that I think we mentioned this last week, that sometimes we think like, well, these are the fighting men that we read about in chapters 1 and 2, and they got the hard job, right? They got to draw their swords and they got to go to battle. But as I was thinking about it today, how the tribe of Levi got here, they had to draw their swords too. And actually, the sword play that they had was a lot more difficult. They had to draw their swords on their brothers and sisters, their fellow, Israelites. And so now, because they were the ones that did that difficult work of standing strong and doing what needed to be done, they now had the privilege and responsibility of being called to this priestly ministry. And so we've seen that in the last 2 chapters, that for the military to function properly, it needed to be counted, it needed to be organized. They needed to put in regiments with standards and all of that. And so too, that organization needs to take place with the Levites. And so to fulfill all of their responsibilities, the taking down of the tabernacle, the moving of the tabernacle, the setting it back up, and all of those things, there needed to be organization. And so here, beginning in verse 14, we see the census of the Levitical families. Verse 14, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, saying, number the children of Levi by their fathers' houses. By their families, you shall number every male from a month old and above. Now, it was not a month old and above last week when we looked at that. But this isn't a military census. They don't need to be 20 years old. And so the Lord says, just count males 1 month or older. And so Moses numbered them according to the word of the Lord as he was commanded. These were the sons of Levi by their names: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And so these are counted, grouped by Levi. Again, we're hundreds of years from Levi, but we're looking at this family tree. There's Levi, and he's got 3 families, that 3 sons that he had. This Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, verse 18. And these are the names of the son of Gershon by their families: Libni and Shimei, and the sons of Kohath, this other son of Levi, by their families: Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Verse 20. And the sons of Merari, this third son of Levi, by their families: Mahli and Mushi. Those are terrible names. I'm sorry, but I call them what I see it. Mushi? I wouldn't want to go to the family reunion and hello, my name is Mushi, but these are the families of the Levites by their fathers' houses. And so these families are divided further. And then beginning in verse 21, we have the census of these families, where they are to camp within the camp of Israel, and the responsibilities now, beginning here with Gershon. It says, from Gershon, verse 21, came the family of the Libnites and the family of the Shemites. These were the families of the Gershonites, those who were numbered according to the number of all the males from 1 month old and above. Of those who were numbered, there were 7,500. Verse 23, the families of the Gershonites were to camp behind the tabernacle westward. And I'll just point out as we're reading through here that east is the front of the camp, towards the rising sun. That's the entrance is on the east. And so it is correct when it says behind the tabernacle westward. And the leader, verse 24, the father's house of the Gershonites was Elisaph, the son of Lael. The duties of the children of Gershon in the tabernacle of meeting included the tabernacle, the tent with its coverings, the screen for the door of the tabernacle of meeting, the screen for the door of the court, the hangings of the court, which were around the tabernacle and the altar and their cords, according to all the work relating to them. Okay? 7,500 Gershonites, males, there to camp right next to the tabernacle, but on the west side, between the tabernacle and the battalion of Ephraim and those tribes that were with them. And we have a little graphic here to put up of how the tribes potentially were laid out, and then where the priestly families, if you can read that, where they are at. But west is there in the back, in the distance there. And so that's where the Gershonites are. Now the Gershonites, Gershon, his name means, and I thought this was really interesting, his name means to drive out, to separate. It's actually a word that can be used to describe divorce, to be apart from. That's what the name Gershon means. And I find it interesting that the items that he has to carry, because they all have their burden to bear, but what he has to carry is that which divides the secular from the sacred. From the inside, it separates the inside from the outside. He's responsible for the curtains, the covers, the screens, where everything on this side is holy and this side is profane, so to speak. And so I thought that was interesting, that his name means divided, separate, and that's really the things he has to carry. And so, beginning in verse 27, now we move to this second son listed of Levi, the Kohathites and Kohath. It says, from Kohath came the family of Amramites, the family of the Izharites, the family of the Hebronites, and the family of the Uzzielites. These were the families of the Kohathites. According to the number of all the males from 1 month old and above, there were 8,600 keeping charge of the sanctuary. This is the largest of these 3 families. Verse 29, the families of the children of Kohath were to camp on the south side of the tabernacle. And the leader of the father's house of the families of the Kohathites was Elzaphan, the son of Uzziel. Verse 31, their duty included the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the utensils of the sanctuary with which they ministered, the screen, and all the work relating to them. And verse 32, Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, was to be chief over the leaders of the Levites with oversight of those who kept charge of the sanctuary. All this God has just ordained to be in perfect order, working in harmony. And these Kohathites, they're to camp again right next to the tabernacle, but they're on the south side. They're between the tabernacle, and then right behind them would be the standard for Reuben, and that's right behind him and his battalion. And again, interestingly, Kohath means to gather, to assemble. And I thought it's fascinating that they are to carry things that are associated with assembling to meet with God. They carry the ark, they carry the menorah, they carry the altars. All the things that are part of the assembly, that's what they are to carry. And then beginning at verse 33, the descendants of Merari. No relation to the Italian Ferrari, but from Merari came the family of the Malites and the family of course, the Mushites. These were the families of Merari. And those who were numbered according to the number of all the males from 1 month old and above were 6,200. This is the smallest of the three families. Verse 35, the leader of the father's house of the families of Merari was Zuriel, the son of Abihail. These were to camp on the north side of the tabernacle, and the appointed duty of the children of Merari included the boards of the tabernacle, its bars, its pillars, its sockets, its utensils, all the work relating to them, and the pillars and the court all around with their sockets, their pegs, and their cords. And so Merari, his family, their descendants, they camp right next to the tabernacle, and they are on the north side, right before the battalion of Dan and the tribes associated with his battalion. Now, again, as we look at kind of the etymology of these three names, Merari means, if you remember, after they cross through the Red Sea and they get to this place called Mara, of bitter water, you can kind of hear that it's from that same root. Merari is that it means bitter, it means hard, it means heavy, it means burdensome, okay? And I think it's interesting that they're the heavy lifters of this group. We got a heavy lifters group in our church, help people move. I was just a beneficiary of that. That's these guys. They got the heavy stuff. They got the boards, the bars, the pillars, the sockets, the pegs. These guys are probably all jacked up, ready to go. Let's move this stuff out. All that was carried by Merari's family, and they consisted of 6,200 males. And then in verse 38, on the last side, not mentioned yet, we find the family of Moses and Aaron specifically. Verse 38, moreover, those who were to camp before the tabernacle on the east, before the tabernacle of meeting, were Moses, Aaron, and his sons, keeping charge of the sanctuary to meet the needs of the children of Israel, but the outsider who came near was to be put to death. And so Moses and Aaron and their immediate family there to keep charge of the sanctuary. They're guarding the sanctuary. They're near the doors of the tabernacle on the east side. And again, Judah, if you were to keep going east, would be Judah and the tribes associated with him. Now, verse 39, the total substituted Levites. All who were numbered of the Levites, whom Moses and Aaron numbered at the commandment of the Lord by their families, all the males from 1 month old and above were 22,000. So, again, a couple things I want to look at here. And again, I've already mentioned it, but both in the New and the Old Testament, right, things are to be done. When they're done God's way, they are to be done decently and they are to be done in order. Can you imagine this whole nation of of Bedouins that each family had their own thing. Can you imagine the mayhem if just everybody decided, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this? If there wasn't this type of organization, man, it really would have been a challenge. But each of these families, they had a calling, and they had to answer that calling. They had to fulfill their calling. And in doing so, they had to have a heart of submission towards others that had their own unique calling. Everybody's got that. Well, I want to carry the bars and the oh no, but you're supposed to carry the covering. It's like, no, there's this mutual submission, and you've got your calling, and I'm dependent upon you doing what God's called you to do, and you're dependent upon me doing what God's called me to do. And so we need we need each other. We need to rely on one another, and we all need to answer what God has for us. And so another important lesson for us, and we'll look at that as we continue. Now, the other issue, if anybody here is a quick math expert, you may have noticed that it says the total of the Levites is 22,000, and that does not match up with 7,500 Gershonites and 8,600 Kohathites and 6,200 Merahites. That equals 22,300. Well, most likely, there's a couple different reasons why this would be, but most likely, since this account, if you remember that God is saying that the Levites are taking the place, that tribe is taking the place of all the firstborn in the nation. And so there may have been 300 of these men, of the 22,300, that were both Levites and firstborn. And therefore, if they're to replace the firstborn, they couldn't be counted because they're already the firstborn. And so I think that's how you get these numbers to equate. Now, verse 40, here's the purpose of this counting: to make redemption of the firstborn. Then the Lord said to Moses, number all the firstborn males of the children of Israel from 1 month old and above, and take the number of their names. Okay? You see what we did? We counted the Levites. Now we're counting the firstborn, because the Levites are going to take the place of these Levites. Verse 41, and you shall take the Levites from me. I am the Lord, instead of the firstborn from among the children of Israel, and the livestock of the Levites instead of the firstborn among the livestock of the children of Israel. And so this has always been God's way. Again, that the firstborn, that they're his, the first fruits, right? They're what we are to give to the Lord. But remember what we said about Exodus 32, instead of the firstborn, God said, I'm going to substitute this entire tribe. And so now we're going to see this accounting and exactly how many firstborn there are. So Moses numbered all the firstborn of the children of Israel as the Lord commanded him. And all the firstborn males, according to the number of names from a month old and above, of those who were numbered of them, were 22,273. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the Levites instead of the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the livestock of the Levites instead of their livestock. The Levites shall be mine. I am the Lord. God says, I'm going to take this whole tribe instead of the firstborn. And so Moses counts up all these firstborn, and the math from this previous census of the Levites to now this doesn't quite come out even. There's 22,000 Levites. And now there's, to take the place of the firstborn of the other tribes, there's 22,273. That means there's 273 more firstborns in the nation from all of these other tribes than there are available Levites to do a 1-for-1. There's more from those 11 tribes than from all of the males in this tribe. And so here's what we do with those 273. Verse 46, and for the redemption of the 273, the firstborn of all the children of Israel, who are more than the number of Levites, You shall take 5 shekels for each one individually, each of those 273, and you shall take them in the currency of the shekel of the sanctuary, the shekel of 20 gerahs, and you shall give the money with which the excess number of them is redeemed to Aaron and his sons. Okay? Do we get what's taking place here? These extra 273 firstborns, they're given a redemption price, okay? Because they're not going to be part of this ministry. That's for the Levites. And so they're going to give this redemption money, 5 silver shekels for each one. That money, it says, is given back into the service of the tabernacle and the priesthood. And so I find it interesting. It's not a common practice today amongst Jewish families, but within some Orthodox and very conservative Jewish communities, they celebrate what's called the Pidyon Haben, Pidyon Haben, Haben, Pidyon Haben, and it means the redemption of the firstborn. And they still do this practice today. They wait until a child is 31 days old. And then when the child reaches, the firstborn son, reaches 31 days old, they give 5 silver coins to the priest. And so this practice all the way back here in Numbers chapter 3 is something that is still practiced in some Jewish families today. Now, verse 49, Moses took the redemption money from those who were over and above those who were redeemed by the Levites, those 273 folks. Verse 50, from the firstborn of the children of Israel, he took the money, 1,365 shekels, and you can add it up, it all adds up just fine, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. And Moses gave their redemption money to Aaron and his sons, according to the word of the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. And so now in chapter 3, they have made this redemption. Now the Levites are fully in place and accounted for, and the firstborn have paid this redemption money if they couldn't have this 1-for-1. And now that they have been counted in that way, we look in chapter 4, and we're going to go through this pretty quick. We see the service of the tabernacle in the first 3 verses. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, take a census of the sons of Kohath from among the children of Levi by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. And so, chapter 3, they're counting for the purpose of substitution. That's why there was that census that took place. Here in chapter 4, okay, there's a lot of counting in Numbers, go figure. In chapter 4, they're counting for the purpose of service. So for the purpose of substitution, chapter 3, now for the purpose of service. If you were a Levite and you were between this age of 30 to 50, you were in full-time ministry. Now, turn to chapter 8 in the book of Numbers, if you would. On your way, look how long chapter 7 is. That's going to be a blast, isn't it? It's going to be so great. 89 verses. Okay, I expect you to have it memorized next week. Okay, in chapter 8, we're going to be here soon, but I want to address now, we'll probably be here in a couple of weeks in chapter 8, but I want to look at what might seem like a discrepancy once we get there. Look with me, chapter 8, beginning in verse 23. It says, then the Lord spoke to Moses saying, this is what pertains to the Levites. From 25 years old and above, one may enter to perform service in the work of the tabernacle of meeting. Verse 25, and at the age of 50 years, they must cease performing this work and shall work no more. That's not your memory verse if you're over 50. Verse 26, they may minister with their brethren in the tabernacle of meeting to attend to the needs, but they themselves shall do no work. Thus you shall do to the Levites regarding their duties. Okay. Here he says, 25 to 50, you got to be involved in ministry. Well, is this right, what we read in chapter 8? Or is this right, what we read in chapter 4, that you need to be 30? And the answer is yes. That's exactly right. Because at the age of 25, they began training for the work of the ministry. They were like apprentices. They were like interns. Then at 30, after 5 years of training, here's the ministry, here's how to do it. Now you're 30. Now you're in full-time ministry. Now you're the guy. Now for those over 50 here, they're not washed up. Okay, can I get an amen? Okay, they're not has-beens. Hey, we don't need you anymore. They're still involved, it says. They're the ones doing the training and the discipling of the guys who are 25 to 30. So both ends of the spectrum are still used, and both ends of the spectrum are being utilized together here. And I know, again, I don't want to necessarily be too harsh, but it's popular today to just get with our own groups and cliques and just, stay within our little bubbles of comfortability. And we're a group over here, and we do this, and we're all the same, and we do this. But there is a real danger and you're not doing yourself any favors by just staying within your own unique demographic. Might be more comfortable to talk to someone exactly like you in the same station of life. But that's not God's model, to stay there. God's model has always began here, is that those with experience are teaching and training the younger, pouring into the younger generation. Now, to do that, you need older people that are willing to be poured out. And you need younger people willing to get poured into, right? And so those with their experience are just supposed to be training this, and men are to do this. Old men should be connecting with young men. Yeah, Titus 2 tells us this very thing, that the more mature ladies are to be pouring into the younger ladies, the younger moms, and helping them. That's just the way that God has designed it, that we need each other of all ages. There's a lot of different ages in this group. We got some in the 80s and some in our teens, and that's all good. We need one another to pour into one another. And so that's what's taken place here. Let's head back to chapter 4. And in verses 4 through 20, it details the Kohathites' responsibility. And again, they had the furnishings and the utensils. This is the service, verse 4, the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of meeting relating to the most holy things. When the camp prepares to journey, when they're packing up camp, Aaron and his sons shall come, and they shall take down the covering veil and cover the ark of the testimony with it. Again, there's not a detail left here to try to figure it out. So Aaron and his sons, the priest, there to handle, okay, we're going to move out. The cloud's moving. Lord's leading us somewhere else. Okay, we're going to go and we're going to handle and we're going to prepare for this move so the Kohathites can do their job. And so, no one's supposed to go in for the tabernacle. This isn't something that's common, so we're going to go in here. And I love this. They put the veil, they covered the Ark of the Covenant with it. And then in verse 6, on top of that veil, it says, they shall put on it a covering of badger skins and spread over that a cloth entirely of blue, and they shall insert its poles. Now, in Exodus, we don't have time to revisit all of this, but we talked about how each of the furnishings in the tabernacle itself, that each of the individual items within the tabernacle, how they all point to Jesus in their own unique way. But now I think we're seeing here that even how each of these items are wrapped, for lack of a better term, and being prepared for transport is pointing to Jesus. Okay, so here's the Ark of the Covenant for this example. God's presence is there, and then covered with a badger skin. It's rough, it's rugged, it's earthy. God's presence is inside of that, though. And then beyond that, there's this covering of blue. It speaks of eternity, it speaks of deity, right? And so, like Jesus, there's both of these natures there. There's so much to explore on your own time if you're interested in just even how these things are wrapped. It says in verse 7, on the table of showbread, they shall spread a blue cloth and put on it the dishes, the pans, the bowls, and the pitchers for pouring, and the showbread shall be on it. They shall spread over them a scarlet cloth, and cover the same with a covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its poles. Verse 9, and they shall take a blue cloth and cover the lampstand of the light with its lamps, its wick trimmers, its trays, and all its oil vessels with which they service it. They shall put it with the utensils in a covering of badger skins and put it on a carrying beam. One thing you'll notice, right, is that the Ark of the Covenant, too, is unique, that it's the only thing that's blue along the way. It would have stuck out, right? As they're going, like, man, there it is. I can see that, right? It says on the golden altar, verse 11, they shall spread a blue cloth and then cover it with the covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its poles. Then they shall take all the utensils of service with which they minister in the sanctuary, put them in a blue cloth, cover them with a covering of badger skins, and put them in a carrying beam. And verse 13, they shall take away the ashes from the altar and spread a purple cloth over it. They shall put on it all its implements with which they minister there, the fire pans, the forks, the shovels, the basins, and all the utensils of the altar. And they shall spread on it a covering of badger skins and insert its poles. So Aaron and his sons, they're overseeing and all this work of getting prepared there. And when Aaron, verse 15, and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is set to go, okay, at that point, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry him, but they shall not touch any holy thing lest they die. They're not even, they got to put the poles through it. They don't even to touch those things. They couldn't even move it without touching it. These are the things in the tabernacle of meetings which the son of Kohath are to carry. The appointed duty of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, is the oil for the light, the sweet incense, the daily grain offering, the anointing oil, the oversight of all the tabernacle, of all that's in it, with the sanctuary and its furnishings. So he kind of oversees all of that work. Then the Lord, verse 17, spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, do not cut off the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among the Levites, but do this in regard to them, that they may live and not die when they approach the most holy things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint each of them to his service and his task, but they shall not go into it to watch while the holy things are being covered, lest they die. They can't even be there for that process. Aaron, his family, his sons, they go in, cover it. Okay, you guys, now you can come and now you can take care of it. Now, verse 21 details the duties of the Gershonites. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, also take a census of the sons of Gershon by their father's house, by their families, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, that you shall number them, all who enter to perform the service, to do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. And so, again, they had the tent itself, the skins, the screens, and all this was overseen by Ithamar. It says, this is the service of the families of the Gershonites in serving and carrying. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle and the tabernacle of meeting with its covering, the covering of the badger skins that's on it, the screen of the door of the tabernacle of meeting, the screen of the door of the gate of the court, the hangings of the court, which are around the tabernacle and the altar, their cords, and all the furnishings for their service, and all that is made for these things, so shall they serve. Verse 27, Aaron and his sons shall assign all the service of the sons of Gershonites, all of their tasks, all of their service, and you shall appoint them to all of their tasks as their duty. This is the service of the family of the sons of Gershon in the tabernacle of meeting, and their duties shall be under the authority of Ithamar, the son of Aaron the priest. Next, Merari. You doing all right? Okay, verse 29. As for the sons of Merari, you shall number them by their families and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50. Don't say even to 50. No, just 30 to 50. You shall number them, even everyone who enters the service to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting. And here's their specific responsibilities. And this is what they must carry as all their service for the tabernacle of meeting: the boards, the of the tabernacle, its bars, pillars, its sockets, and the pillars around the court with their sockets, pegs, and cords, with all their furnishings and all their service. And you shall assign to each man by name the items that he must carry. This is the service of the families of the sons of Merari, as all their service for the tabernacle of meeting, under the authority of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. And so here's these three families, their specific responsibilities and duties, and it's hard work. It's estimated that all of this stuff weighs about 20,000 pounds that these families had to carry. Being in the ministry isn't always glamorous here. And so now we have, through the end of the chapter, a summary of the census of these active servants. Verse 34. And Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of the congregation numbered the sons of the Kohathites by their families and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting. And those who were numbered by their families were 2,750. These were the ones who were numbered of the families of the Kohathites, all who might serve in the tabernacle of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And those who were numbered of the sons of Gershon by their families and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting, those who were numbered by their families, by their father's house, were 2,630. Verse 41, these are the ones who were numbered of the families of the sons of Gershon, of all who might serve in the tabernacle of meeting, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the commandment of the Lord. Verse 42, those are the families of the sons of Merari, this third son, who were numbered by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who entered the service for work in the tabernacle of meeting. Those who were numbered by their families were 3,200. These are the ones who were numbered of the families of the sons of Merari, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. All who are numbered of the Levites, whom Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel numbered by their families and by their fathers' houses, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, everyone who came to do the work of service and the work of bearing burdens in the tabernacle of meeting. I like that, bearing burdens. Those who were numbered were 8,580. Verse 49, according to the commandment of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, each according to his service and according to his task. Thus they were numbered by him, as the Lord commanded Moses. Let's stand. I'm going to have the worship team come back up. But God, I think in the midst of this and these names and families and the counting, is saying to them and to us, you matter. You have a spot, you have a calling, you have a position, there's something for you. Don't neglect, you have a role to play, and you need one another. And no one is not seen by God. We all matter. Now, I got two separate quotes here. Charles Spurgeon preached a sermon on simply verse 49 here, this final verse of Numbers chapter 4. And both these quotes are from that sermon. He who counts the stars and calls them all by their names leaves nothing unarranged in his own service. His church, therefore, should exhibit the discipline of an army, and all his warriors should know how to keep rank. And I love that. We're in the Lord's army. Next, he says, at this season, When our church is making a most earnest effort to glorify the Lord by seeking conversions, we would muster all the servants of our master and summon each one to take his appointed service. I can't see if I had a misprint on there, but I misprinted it in my notes. His appointed service. The work of the Lord is to be done and should be done well and done by us all most cheerfully and heartily. Gather therefore yourselves together and let each redeemed one take up his burden and bear it before the Lord in due order to this end. Like Moses, we would call you out one by one and give you a charge as from the Lord. Let's pray. Lord, I do pray that we would understand that we are not simply, church isn't just something we go to and attend. Lord, it's something to be a part of. That we are a part of what you are building, a part of a ministry, part of a priesthood, Lord. That we'd recognize that we'd accept our own individual and unique calling that you have on our life. And that in doing so, Lord, that we would look to you, Lord, as our great high priest, that our ministry would not be necessarily first and foremost to people, but Lord, to you. And it would be based on the altar, based on the work and the sacrifice of what you have done for us, that we would find our energy and our fire and ignite, Lord, our ministry for you. Help us to see the cross clearly, to understand who you are, how much you love us, and what you've done for us. We thank you, Lord. We owe you all for eternity, Lord. And we thank you for that sacrifice paid on our behalf. In Jesus' name, amen.